everybody. How's everybody doing tonight? I love having everyone in the house on this clinic. So I see a lot of repeat friends in here, and it's our genuine honor to be able to keep hosting these for you guys. So thank you for being a part of this and coming in here. We've got some important announcements tonight. So our friends at Tama have helped us put this together in conjunction with our friend Damian Figures, who is running video and lights and sound tonight with his buddy Jordan. Give it up for Damian and Jordan. They're awesome. Thank you, guys. So anyway, yeah, we've got Yoshiki Sakato, John Palmer, and Ben Powell, as well as Sam Campbell from Tama here tonight. Thank you guys for being here and for all the assistance with this, and for the wonderful, ridiculous drums that you're seeing before you. We literally had very few Tama drums until these guys hustled and got us some amazing product to check out today. So thank you guys. Also, thank you to the Remo folks. We've got some killer giveaways from Tama, Remo, and the T&R guys, who are the True Vibe, used to be booty shakers. You all have heard of those before. So if you don't know about it, last time we tried our new QR code system. So on the computer screen there to y'all's left, as well as to your right on the door, there's a QR code. You just scan it with your phone. It pulls up a Google form. You put your name and number in there, and we will either call you, or if you hopefully stay for the whole time, we're going to be giving away, oh my gosh, there's practice pads, there's stick bags, there's snare bags, and there's an SLP Tama snare drum that will be given away at the end. Thank you, Tama, for doing that. That's awesome. Anyway, so Justin's going to get right ahead. We're going to have a good time, a good rock and roll program. So everyone, give it up for Justin Scott. Thank you, Justin.
I'm Justin Scott. Thanks for coming and checking this out. Thanks for everybody at Tama and Forks for having me out. It's a real honor to be here. This is my first time ever doing drum clinic or anything, so there's a little bit of nerve. Yeah, I'm mostly known from like social media world, and I do a lot of educational stuff, so I do a lot of private teaching and Zoom lessons, and I have lesson material that I sell on my website, and yeah, I've basically kind of built my career around practicing. So when I was in music school about 11 years ago, I went to Atlanta Institute of Music, did about a year program there, and it was great. Music school is not for everybody. It's just a place to learn how to learn and just apply yourself. And it's like you can learn how to practice and get feedback from people who are, professionals. And so you get out of music school what you put in. But when I was there, they just kept saying the same thing, like you got to practice now because once you get out there, you're going to be working so much, you're not going to have time to practice anymore. And I just couldn't handle that because I just love practicing. So like the process of learning, exploring, and figuring things out, I just became like super passionate about that process. So where everybody else out of music school was kind of thinking, I need to, practice and practice and practice, and then so that I can then go make money playing music. For me, it was like, I need to figure out how to make money playing music so I can keep practicing. And so immediately out of school, everybody's trying to get gigs. I'm trying to get like a teaching job because I knew I would like teaching. And I knew that it would give me the time if I had enough students and I was, playing church gigs and things, that I could make enough money to pay the bills and still spend the majority of my time practicing. Sorry, my lungs aren't working. So anyway, that's kind of what I did. Luckily, I have a wife that's super supportive and always believed in my dream to play the drums. So between my income teaching and playing at church on the weekends and occasionally doing gigs, and her income, I was able to, just spend the majority of my work time during the week just exploring. And so I've done that for about 10 years now, and yeah, I still love the process more than anything else. Like I mean, it's great playing gigs. It's great getting paid. But in the end of the day, even if you took all that away, took away endorsements and the following and all of that, I would still just want to wake up every day, make some coffee, and sit down and practice. So it's how I like to spend my time. So I've learned a lot over the years about practicing. So I just want to talk about that stuff a little bit with you guys, just my kind of philosophy for practicing, the different ways that I approach, like mentally how I approach different things. And then I'll talk a little bit about just the different types of practice and like the three things that I kind of always focus on to make sure that I'm, practicing efficiently and effectively. So yeah, I'll talk about those things, and then later on I'm gonna actually demonstrate a little bit of concept practice, just give you an idea of how I like to go about learning, different patterns and things on the instrument. But for now, I'm gonna go ahead and play a couple more tracks, and then maybe just do a little like free play, and then I'll jump into teaching a little bit.
Go for it.
Well, I shouldn't have done this. So I like playing tracks that don't normally have drums in them. It's probably pretty normal. I like finding stuff that doesn't already have at least like real drums in it. So this is a song by the Piano Guys called Berlin, and it has some like a little bit of drum tracks in it or whatever, but yeah, it's just really fun to kind of improvise over. So I'll play that first, And then the second song I'm playing is by a guy named Conan Papas. He lives in New York, and he was just he's a piano player, and he was nice enough to make me this track. So I'll play those 2 tracks for you. So, thanks for the support. It helps with the nerves. We okay? All right. Yeah, so I'll start talking a little bit about, I'll start with kind of the three things that I've discovered over time that have helped me a ton. And if I'm hitting a wall mentally when I practice, I can look back on one of these three things and find where the issue is. So they all start with the letter R, so I just think of them as the three R's. And the first one's obvious. It's repetition. And I won't talk a lot about it because it's the most obvious thing. Everybody repeats things over and over when you practice. But what I will say is when I was younger in particular, I would, let's say I practiced something for 30 minutes. I would repeat it over and over really badly for like 30 minutes and just suck at it. And then for like 1 minute, I would play it correctly, maybe 4 or 5 times in a row, and I'd get this feeling of like, yes, I finally did it. And I didn't really think about it at the time, but I would get excited and I'd think, okay, I did it. I can move on now. And so what I just did was give myself 30 minutes of repetition sucking at something, and then 1 minute of repetition doing it right. So I learned that, the repetition doesn't really start to count for you until you're doing it correctly. And you've kind of gotten to the point where you can play something without thinking about it very much. So you have to obviously repeat things over and over and be bad at it, but the race really doesn't start till you can play it well, and then you start giving your brain tons of repetition. Other than that, repetition is pretty obvious, so I won't talk about that much. The next R is one that took me a long time to figure out, and that's recall. And recall is just making your brain recall the information from scratch. And every time you do that, your brain gets faster and faster at finding that information wherever it stored it and giving it to you. So I would have times where, I'd practice one concept or something every day for 30 minutes. And by the end of the week, I've done 2.5 hours of repetition. And then I would try to play it at a gig or something, and it would fall apart. And you'd think, I don't understand. I know I can play this. I've done it for hours and hours. And it wasn't a repetition problem. It was a recall problem. When I would ask my brain for it, I'd only recalled it a handful of times. So it's like the little secretary in my brain's like, oh, yeah, where'd I put that? And I'm like, I need it now. And she, oh, yeah, here it is. By then it's too late. I've already butchered whatever I was trying to play. But if you recall something hundreds of times, then your brain gives it to you immediately when you ask for it. So you have to find ways to make your brain stop thinking about it and then thinking about it, right? Just like you would if you were learning a song or like a snare drum solo or something. So I don't know how many people have done Will Coxon's snare solos or like in music school, we had to do those. I remember thinking, why am I doing so many snare solos? And it was because, well, number one, I had to learn how to sight read. I needed to get better at reading. But it was also just learning the skill of reading a measure, and then you're already looking at the next measure while you're playing the measure that you just read. And so you have to learn to recall information and connect things. So, when I practice something, I typically will take that idea, whatever the concept is, and I'll combine it with other concepts that I'm practicing. And I make myself these little practice chains. So if I'm working on a linear pattern or something, and I'm also working on, I don't know, a jazz comping exercise or something, then I'm going to eventually, work on them individually for a little bit, and then I'm going to combine them, force my brain to recall the information over and over by going back and forth, just like you would with a song or something. And then over time, I'll try to add 4 or 5 links to the chain. The more links you add to the chain, the more challenging it becomes, and the more you're actually going to train your brain to do what you're asking it to do in real time in the real world while you're playing music. So recall was huge for me, and when I started implementing that and working on little practice chains, it changed the way I was able to play in real time. There's a list of things that we're all capable of playing if you sit there for 2 minutes and try it. But the list of things that you can pull out immediately whenever you want is much smaller, at least for me. So the goal is to get that list of things that I can do whenever I want in real time. I want to be able to keep adding to that list and not just have a huge list of things that I'm technically capable of doing. So that's recall. The third R is rest. And this one took me a long time to figure out. Kind of finding the right work to rest ratio and understanding like your own brain. And I can only speak for my brain. I assume everybody's brain works like this, but I can only speak for mine. So I can do about 3, maybe 4 hours of like mental practice where I'm like pushing my brain to learn stuff in a day. Once I hit that point, my brain's gonna start saying, nope, you're done. And I can always tell when my brain's doing that because suddenly I start going backwards. Things that I was doing just fine on I start going backwards on them. And that's just my brain saying like, okay, you're done for the day. So my rule is like, well, I'll do anywhere from 2 to 4 hours of practice, usually 4 or 5 days a week. And when I do my like mental practice time, I have my list of things I'm working on. I work really hard, I focus really hard, and then eventually, obviously I hit that point where my brain says you're done. And then the best thing I've found to do at that point is to completely walk away, like mentally leave that alone for the next 24 hours till you come back to it again. And let your brain process that information. Because your brain, the processing part of your brain, the part that actually turns things into muscle memory, and again, I'm not a brain expert, but I can just tell you from my own mind, like it needs that time for you to leave and leave it alone. And it can go in, it's like it sends little worker elves in and it sees the mess you've made and they start organizing and fixing things. And I had a time in music school where it should have dawned on me then, but my teacher, I had to do this, it was a page of jazz soloing or something. I think the book was Modern Techniques for the Modern Drummer. I think it's a blue jazz book. Maybe people have worked through that. Anyway, it was a full page. I had procrastinated for some reason. And I thought, oh, I'll just work on it the day of and play it for him. It'll be fine. And I sat down for 4 straight hours just hitting this page over and over. And I probably got 80% of the way there. And then by that 4th hour, I just took a nosedive. Pretty soon I couldn't play any of it. So I went to my teacher and I'm like, I've been at it for 4 hours. I can't play it right now. He's like, no problem. Go home. Don't play it the rest of the night. Don't think about it. Go to bed. Wake up tomorrow morning. Come and play it for me first thing. So I did. I didn't think about it. Woke up first thing. Sat down. Put the book in front of the kit. Nailed the entire thing for the first time. And I'd never played the whole thing correctly. And he knew. It was like your brain just needs you to leave it alone and let it process all that stuff you've been practicing. And that was essentially like cramming because I never looked at that page again. And if I wanted to actually be able to use it, I would have probably had to have spent a few weeks on it. But understanding rest over time has helped me a ton. Little breaks in between the different things that you're practicing. If you practice a concept for 20 or 30 minutes, try taking a 2 or 3 minute break and doing a physical activity. It helps kind of reset your brain, and then you can jump back in, and it helps you focus a little bit better. And then obviously rest between practice sessions like I was talking about. I try to rest 2 or 3 days on the weekends from mental practice. And then there's like rest periods where like every few months I'll take a vacation of some kind and completely get away from it for like a week or so. That's huge. The best I ever sound is when I come back from like the beach or something for a week. Suddenly my brain's just clear, and then it's gone again the next day. But and then there's times where like I'm practicing a particular concept, and I'm like, man, I've been hammering away at this for like 2 months. Why isn't this getting better? Why am I still struggling? So I always come back and look, okay, well, I've given it plenty of repetition. I've given it plenty of recall, but I haven't rested this idea. I haven't just put it away and let my brain work on it. And sometimes that's the only thing I can do. I can just say, I'm not going to work on this for 2 weeks or a month or whatever. And typically what happens is a month later, it just randomly comes out in my playing because my brain goes, oh, that thing you were working on. Finally got it for you. And I'm like, I wanted this like a month ago. But I don't know. I can't control when my brain processes information. I just know that for me, that's how it's worked. So repetition, recall, rest. I can always look back on those things and find where the problem is. All right, now I'll talk just generally about how I organize my practice, how I think about different types of practice. Over time you figure out different things. Everything that I say about practice comes obviously from my own personal experience. I don't believe in a one-size-fits-all way of teaching or learning. So just because I say something works for me doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work great for you. You might have the opposite, you know. But it's worth exploring what a lot of different people are teaching and figuring out how your brain works, like how you like to learn things. Some of my favorite drummers have ways of learning that doesn't work for me. And it doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means it's wrong for me, and it works really well for them. So that's all I'll say really about, you know, different people and the way they like to practice. But what works for me is I have a warm-up time, and my warm-up time is made up of a list of things that I try to practice every day. They're kind of like non-optional exercises. Because if you're like me, I like to skip around. My brain one day wants to work on jazz, and the next day I want to work on like linear stuff or, you know, practice to a song or something. And so I like that. I want my brain to be, I want to be able to do what I feel like doing that day, but I have to make myself do something that is like daily repetition. So by giving myself a list of exercises that are like not optional, it's very helpful. So I just picked stuff that I knew would always be useful to me. Great stuff for building, you know, getting warm and getting my brain going. So I have some rudiment stuff. I always start with unison strokes. I'll do unison strokes with my hands with my bass drum, and then I'll keep time with my left foot. And if I can play singles and doubles and half paradiddles and stuff, and I can play all three of these limbs together without flamming, then I know that technically I should be able to separate them, and they should stay even, right? So people ask about like playing singles. The only way I ever learned how to do that was by making my brain get comfortable with unisons first. You know, because it's going to do this for a little while, but eventually you train it to stay even, and then you can split them up. And the same thing for doubles. If I can go, or like half a paradiddle, whatever, you find the thing that you want to get good at, and you make unison strokes. So I always start my practice with that, and then I do like, you know, different permutations of rudiments. I always have an exercise that gets my brain, like the two sides of my brain talking to each other. So I'll do like a Gavin Harrison exercise you may have seen, 16th note paradiddles with the hands while dotted eighth paradiddles with the feet. That's just like that kind of thing. I don't find a ton of value in a lot of those exercises because I don't think I'll ever use them, but it's great for getting the brain going. So anyway, I always have a warm-up. I try to get that done in 15 or 20 minutes, but sometimes you get like obsessed with some new thing, and pretty soon an hour's gone by, and you know you've wasted a bunch of that time. Then I have my like main, like I think of it like mental development practice time. That takes up the most of my practice. That's where I'm exploring concepts most of the time, or I might be working on music. If I have a gig or something, that's my time where I have to learn songs. But most of the time for me, it's where I'm exploring concepts on the instrument, and that's really what I've spent the most time doing in the last 10 years since music school, is just thinking of concepts I can use on the instrument, taking like foundational stuff like the new breed, or like Benny Greb's language of drumming system, the grid system. And just like I would sit for hours and think of different ways I could explore those, and how can I use this in a different way? What's every possible way of doing this and this and this, you know? And pretty soon I had hundreds of pages written out. And I really recommend that. Like if you want to explore an area, sometimes it's really worth exploring it yourself before you go grab a map. You know, there's nothing wrong with a book, but sometimes you can learn a lot more, and it ends up being more valuable to you because you found the information. So if you want to know like what's all the linear patterns that I could play, well, you could go get a free, you know, music notation software called MuseScore, and you can write them all out yourself, and then you know you made yourself do that. Like when I went through that process of like writing all this stuff out, it was hours and hours of work, but it becomes special to you because you made your brain figure it out. And then, you know, years later I looked and Gary Chafee already wrote all this stuff. Why did I do this? But it was valuable to me because I made my brain find it myself. So I recommend that, like music notation software, just start writing out patterns, writing out permutations of things. It's just very, very helpful. So anyway, that's my, you know, main practice time. And I want to talk a little bit about like how I focus mentally, because it was always a big problem for me. I would finish like a mental practice time where I'm like in analytical mode, right? I'm thinking about all these little details. I'm focusing on every little thing. And then I would go to like perform or create. And my brain is still in practice mode where it's thinking about all the little details, which is like the worst thing. So I had to really start thinking about my approach mentally to things. So when I practice like mental development stuff, I think like a micromanager or like a personal trainer for my limbs. I'm thinking about all the little details and I'm analyzing every little thing going on. So if I'm working on a pattern, I'm listening, is it even? Am I flamming? What's happening dynamically? What's happening with my technique? I'm thinking about all these little details because that's how you really develop that new information. But if I try to do that when I'm trying to be creative or like perform, it's really, it never ends well for me. So that's how I focus during that period. I typically end my practice time with what I think of as creative practice, where I'm just going to let myself create. The goal is to get out of that micromanaging mode, and now I want to think like a macro manager. I want to think like a conductor of an orchestra. The conductor's not thinking of all the little details of how you're playing your instrument. He's just hearing all the different things, and he's figuring out how to combine them. So you want to think big picture, like macro management. What's the overall sound I'm going for? What's the groove? What's the feel? What's the dynamic? If you're playing with a band, am I lined up with the bass player? What's the pocket position? Did the singer just give a hand signal? I want to think big picture, not about the little details. If I find myself thinking about a particular sticking or rudiment or my technique, then I've kind of lost the battle. So, sorry, I'm doing a terrible job holding this. But anyway, so and kind of preparing myself mentally when I start practicing that way. So for instance, like a way that I might be creative is I might turn on a really slow metronome, and then I would give myself like little rules, like, okay, I can play whatever I want to play, but it has to be in eighth note triplet. And I can, and the goal is to not think about the sticking. I'm like, just an example. Like this is my pulse. So I'm just thinking eighth note triplet, and I'm trying not to think about the patterns I'm actually playing. I'm just going to let my limbs play whatever comes to them. And of course, I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to play something that I shouldn't. But that's the idea. Is like start thinking big picture and try to not think very much about the technique or whatever. And 99% of my Instagram videos come from that. I just turn on a camera and then I just let myself play. I'll listen back to it later. I'll usually delete all of it. But if I find a few clips I like, I'm like, oh, I liked that. Every clip I share is flawed. There's always things in it that I'm like, I don't like that. That could have been much better. But I like what I was going for, or, I thought it sounded cool overall. And so I'll share it, But that's where my footage comes from. All of my footage really is kind of a byproduct of just sitting down and practicing. And I love that kind of practice. And I love finishing my practice with that creative kind of thinking. Otherwise, if I just suddenly had to go perform or something, my brain is probably still going to be in analytical, like think about your hand technique while you play mode, and that's terrible. It's really hard to be creative. And then for me, like my physical practice time is typically later in the day. I usually practice in the morning, early afternoon. And then I do usually physical practice at night. I usually use like practice pad kits, like the Tama True Touch kit, which Sam was nice enough to send me. That thing is real nice. And I love practice kits like that because they feel like real drums. They sound enough like real drums, but I can, practice whenever I want and, not mess anybody up. And then I can watch like TV or watch a movie while I do it. So, sometimes when I'm just working on physical stuff, if it's not something I have to learn, I'm just going to let my hands sit there and work on stuff, push myself with speed, push myself until it really hurts, and then back off. If I'm working on technique, I have to focus a little more and be a little bit more of like a micromanager. And then I have like practice time where I think of it like focused displacement practice, where I'm taking a concept that I want to be able to play without thinking, and I'm going to like try to watch a movie while I do it. I'm going to see if can I put 80% of my concentration on the movie and still be able to play this thing, because that's technically what I would want to do with a band or something. I want the majority of my focus to be on the music and not on the specifics of what I'm playing. So that's kind of how I categorize my different types of practice. And there's days where it doesn't work out, and I might skip certain things or whatever. But how you kind of mentally approach the different types of practice, being aware of that, I feel like can really, really help. So I hope that's helpful for you. I don't know if your brain works like mine, but if it does, then I think that could be helpful for you. All right. Obviously, I'll take some questions at the end, but if there's a quick question or two about that. Yes. So I was thinking 1 and 2 and 3, and I wasn't like playing every note. I was leaving some gaps. Yeah, I was just thinking 1 and 2 and, but I technically I guess I could have played every note, but I usually leave gaps. So anytime there's like a slow tempo or something, in my mind I'm subdividing that always by something. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so I don't have to be playing anything. I can think of where the time is and then add in notes where I want. That's the goal. Obviously, I'm not going to do it every time, but that's what I'm trying to do. And so, you can give yourself those rules, and usually just a few rules like that really help you kind of explore. Sometimes I just let myself play, just create in the moment, whatever I feel like. But sometimes it's nice to give yourself a little rule. If there's no other questions, then I'll just go ahead and jump into another couple tracks.
I have a question, but it's not about technique or something.
That's fine.
How do you up your Instagram, just posting? How was your
How do you like being?
how do you build and grow very fast on social media?
Well, when I started it, it was back in like 2016, 2017, and the Instagram's changed a lot. The algorithms changed a lot. It's very hard to understand how that works. I've gotten to a point, honestly, anymore. Like I don't think about very much about when I post or anything anymore. But when it was a thing, I just made sure to have like consistent times to post. I tried to make sure that if I was sharing a video, it didn't look or sound like my last video that I shared or the last few videos. I think a lot of times there's, people will use the same angle every single time, and people will assume, oh, I already saw this, and they just keep going. So I try to, that's why I'm always changing my setup. I always have new cymbals and different tunings and things, because it's fun for me to do that, but it's also, I think, a good thing just to add a little bit of variety. But yeah, nowadays it's hard to understand their algorithm. Like,
so I would change.
yeah, like recently they changed their Instagram, went back to kind of their old way of doing things because the new way no one liked it. And suddenly, like, I started getting way more views on videos out of nowhere. So my views went up and comments went up, and I've lost, I think, 300 followers in the last week randomly. I have no idea how that works, but their algorithm's doing what it's doing, and I have no idea why that happens. So it's really hard to know how to work with the app. But all I can really say is, like, I think if you can find something unique that you offer, and for different people it's different things. For me, it might be the way I record. It might be the fact that I always change up my setup. I don't know. For some people, it's their personality. They're super funny and they make really funny videos and they do it with drumming. And but if you're not doing something unique, if they can come across your video and they think, oh, this is just like 100 other videos I've seen. If you can find something that kind of separates you, I think that's really the key. But I don't know, because I don't know why people follow me? What's their main reason? A lot of people, oh, I love his snare sound. Like, that could be why 80% of people follow me, because they just love the way my snare sounds in the video. I don't know. But I think if I had to give one piece of advice, it would just be like, find your thing that you can do in a unique way, and what do you offer that's kind of unique or special. And again, it can be anything. Obviously, it could be your playing, it can be your own style. If you take the time to develop your own style and kind of forge your own path a little bit, and that's where, like, not just studying all the same books everybody else is studying, and if you can really kind of try to find a way to make your own sound at least a little bit, it'll separate you enough. I think you're going to find success there. I hope that answers it. All right. This next track is one I made with my band Naughty Panda called Hibernation. Yeah, I think we put it out a couple years ago, and it's a fun one to play. next one is by Charlie Hunter, a trio that he played in with Sam Fribush and Jeff Clapp. I think it's a live recording, so I just removed the drums. You're probably still going to hear a little bit of them. But it's a really fun tune to play. So this song is called Swinging at the Haven. I'm going to talk a little bit about how I practice. Well, one of the ways I practice concepts. And I'll kind of take you step by step through my system. So, back when I was in music school, first like quarter that I was there, Chris Coleman came and did a clinic, and then you could take private lessons with him. So I took a private lesson with him, and it was, it was magical because he's just this monstrous beast, and it was like, I learned a ton of stuff in that lesson. But the main thing that, I'm sorry. But the main thing that he talked about was he pulled out the sheet of all the different note rates and subdivisions, and at the time I grew up self-taught basically. So by the time I got to music school, I was still trying to get my head wrapped around things like note rates and subdivisions, all that. And so he pulled out this sheet, and he's like, you need to know how to count all of these, and you need to know how to count all of them over basically every pattern you know how to play. So he's like, if you know how to play any rudiment or linear pattern or whatever, you need to be able to count this over the top of it. And at the time, it was like, that's not possible. You're crazy. But over time, I learned more about it, and it became just such a pivotal part of my practice. So that's kind of how I generally start. So as an example, let's just say I'm learning, I'll just use a linear pattern of 5. So the first thing that I'm going to do, let's try to get this closer. First thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to get to the point where I can play the pattern without thinking very much. So the idea is I need to be able to play this pattern and feel like I could still have a conversation with somebody. So I'm going to sit here and repeat this pattern until I feel like I can talk at the same time. So I'm going to use a pattern of 5. I'm going to use right, kick, kick, left, kick, kick. So technically a pattern of 10, but I'm just switching up which hand is leading the pattern. And so the idea is to start, I'm just going to play it as much as I can. I might stay in one place, I might move it around, whatever's most comfortable. And I can speed up and slow down as much as I want. But I want to get to the point where I can sit here and still talk to you and play the pattern and feel like I could have a conversation or watch a movie or something. So I'm playing right, kick, kick, left, kick, kick. And I'm going to play that over and over until it's really comfortable. Then the next step for me would be focusing on counting. So I'm going to start with the count that it naturally fits with. So I'm going to start by counting 5s. So I'm going to play, however you like to count 5. There's different ways to count 5. You can do like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or you can do the Benny Greb trick where he says a word with that many syllables, like university I think he uses. You just find the way you like to count 5 and count 5. So I'm going to play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to work through every permutation of that pattern. Because once I start moving that pattern into different note rates and different starting positions really help with that. So each permutation or each starting position of that pattern. So I'm going to take that pattern, I'm going to shift everything over one note. So now I'm starting with the second pattern or the second beat of the note of the pattern. So instead of right, kick, kick, I'm going to play left, kick, kick, right, kick, kick, left, kick, kick. So it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I would work on each permutation, all 5 possible permutations of that pattern. And I want to get really comfortable with those. Then the next step would be to actually count all of the note rates that it doesn't fit into over the top of it. So that's when I would, generally for me, I'm going to keep some sort of time with my left foot while I'm doing this. And there's different ways to do that. But I'm just going to, well, for now I won't worry about it. But I would get comfortable with counting the different rates. So you can start with like eighth notes. I'll start with eighth note triplets. So this is where I'm okay with slowing down, speeding up. I'm not going to do this with a metronome. I'm just going to do this as slow or as fast as I need to get to the point where I can out loud count the note rate with what I'm playing. So I'm going to play 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. And I can speed up, slow down if I mess up, which I'm going to the first time I do something like that. If you've never done it, it's very weird for your brain. So if you have to go 1 and 2 and 1 at a time, that's perfectly fine. And then when I can do that with all the different note rates, and of course you're going to get to note rates that are really weird, like trying to count to 7 while playing this pattern of 5 is really weird for your brain the first time you try to do it. But eventually what happens is, you know, that's just one pattern that I've taken, but it's a grouping of 5 notes. And so you have to start thinking of the groupings of notes, you know, the different, you know, grouping of 3, 4, 5, and then the note rates that you can play in. And this is always a little confusing. It was for me growing up in particular. Because if I played something like this, and I asked most people, you know, oh, it's a triplet. And it's like, well, that's a pattern of 5. It's a grouping, or I'm sorry, a grouping of 3. And it can be a triplet. It most naturally fits into triplet, but it's not triplet just because of it's a grouping of 3. So you start thinking of the different groupings that you can play of notes and how you can fit them into different note rates. And so eventually what happens is when you take one pattern like this and you put it through those rates and you get comfortable counting over the top, the next time you pick a pattern of 5, it can be anything. Now your brain has already done a grouping of 5. So it's that much easier to learn that one. And pretty soon it just starts to snowball and you can kind of take any number and put it in. It's not going to be perfect every time, but it makes it much easier the next time you do it. So the hardest work is when you first do this. If you've never done anything like that, it's really weird for your brain the first time you do that. But once I get to the point where now I can count it through the different note rates, that's when I would actually get a metronome out, like a nice slow quarter note pulse, and I would make myself go up and down the note rates or the subdivisions with that quarter note pulse. So I'll try to do a little bit of that. So if this is just 1, so I'll start with eighth notes. And then eighth note triplet, so it'll be 1 and 2 and then 16th. And you can speed up and slow down to get more comfortable. And then eventually quintuplet, which is going to feel the most natural. 16th triplet. And then technically the next one will be septuplet. This is always the hardest one for me. That's always the weirdest. 7s are weird, really weird for me. Benny Grebb's "Listen to the Radio" helps a lot. Instead of saying 7, I like "listen to the radio" a lot. But that's how I like to work on it, kind of step by step. Start with being able to just play it while talking to someone or doing something else, and then you work on counting it with the rate that it fits. Then you work on permutations of that pattern. Make sure that each permutation feels just as comfortable as the first one, and then you actually start putting it with the rates that it doesn't fit naturally with. And then you get to the metronome part, and you can speed up and slow down. And then it really gets interesting when you make yourself move between them in random places. If I change rates, that's where you really have to be comfortable with all the different permutations, because suddenly I'm starting the pattern in a weird place when I move from quintuplet to 16th triplets or something. And of course, if this is like something you're looking at going, I'm never going to do this, this is crazy, you can always just simplify, take out things like quintuplet or septuplet. If you don't think you're ever going to play that, then stick with the note rates that you're going to play all the time in music. I don't like practicing stuff that I don't feel like I'm going to be able to use in most of the stuff that I do. I avoid like crazy 13 against 11, in 27/16 stuff. Like, it's very impressive, but my ears never care about that stuff. Like, my ears have to care first. So if I'm going to practice something, I want to make sure that I can use it in a way that still has like groove or pulse to it, and so stuff like this really helps, because if you can put groupings of notes in the note rates that you're playing that don't naturally fit, like groupings of 5 sound really good in 16th triplets, and so if you can get comfortable with that, it gives it kind of this under the bar line or under the beat line kind of feel, which is really fun to work on. The last thing I'll do is find like an orchestration, so like what I just had there, find different places on the instrument that I can put it. And then I'm generally going to, put it into a practice chain. So I'll give like an example of a practice chain that I would create. I had a few ideas. Yes. So I'm going to start with this pattern. I'm going to start with the second kick of the pattern, and I'll play it as eighth note triplet. And I'm going to play it into like a jazz comping exercise, kind of similar to what you would have in like the book The Art of Bop Drumming by John Riley. So I'm going to play a pattern. And so what I'm going to do is, when I come out of this 5 pattern, is I'm going to end on the last note of the triplet. I'm going to end on that to kind of go into the jazz pattern. So the orchestration I'll do is this. Wait, think of this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that'll be my orchestration for that. Then the jazz comping exercise. I don't know if this is actually from the book. I think there's one like this in the book, but I'm going to play. So the idea is to try to go back and forth between those and connect them. So I would work on each for a little while, get comfortable, and then try to connect them like they're part of a song or something. So 1, 2, 3. And then I would add another link on. So let's say I'm also working on like the Rosanna Shuffle. So I'm going to add that. And then just for fun, I'll add another like fill pattern. So I'm going to do another grouping of 5. I'll play right, right, left, left kick. Really useful, particularly if you kind of start to sweep your right hand a little bit. Just has a nice feel, particularly when you play it in triplet. So I'm going to try to go from the halftime shuffle into that pattern. Actually, no. I think the fill would lead into that. So I'll play the fill leading into the halftime shuffle. And I'm going to try to end this on the also, that last note of the triplet. So I'm going to orchestrate it. So let's try jazz pattern moving that fill into the, yeah, I'll try that. Jazz pattern into the first fill, into the shuffle, and then I'll try to go into that last fill. Try to speed it up. This probably isn't going to work. Anyway, you get the idea. You really have to concentrate when you start like linking a bunch of things together. But that's like the best way I've found to actually learn things, because if I don't practice it like that, then it's just something that I'm capable of playing, but I can't actually pull out, and it's just frustrating. So, but if I force myself to combine it to a practice chain like that, I'm training my brain to pull that information out immediately. So when I ask for it, it's like, oh, there it is, there it is. And then, of course, there's problems, and you make a mental note like, that didn't work, I need to go back and work on that tomorrow. I mean, I've made plenty of mistakes, that I'm thinking about already, like I need to go back tomorrow and work on stuff, But in general, that's how I kind of take a new idea or concept, and kind of those are the steps that I take. And so, again, I don't know how your brain likes to learn things, but it's worked really well for me, so hopefully that's helpful for you guys. So I have one more track to play, but I think I'll go ahead and just start by like opening it up to some questions before that. So if anybody has any questions, yeah. I usually make a list in that like mental practice time for me. I'll practice like 4 to 6 different things, and they're all different. Like I'm not gonna try to work on like necessarily work on like 5 different linear patterns. Like I'll do like maybe a linear pattern. Maybe I'll do the same thing with like a rudiment. And then I'll have like some coordination, like stacked coordination practice where I'm maybe practicing like a new breed of style where I'm moving through a grid, like a 16th note grid underneath an ostinato pattern or something. I do that kind of practice a ton. I love that kind of new breed style. If you've never done the new breed book, I've never actually looked in the book. Like in music school, they gave us the reading pages, and that's all we ever did, and they would give us ostinatos. So I've never actually looked through the book. I'm sure it's full of great stuff, but I always found it more interesting to come up with my own ideas with it. So like a quick example of that, because it is interesting and it can be helpful. If you've never done this kind of practice, it's very useful. It's the best way I've ever found to work on coordination. So, for instance, let's just say I want to get comfortable playing like a paradiddle groove between my kick and snare. So I'm going to start with playing that paradiddle and trying to make it. What's that? Yeah, the ostinato would be the paradiddle between kick and snare, and just trying to make it sound dynamically like it's a groove. And the goal is, no matter what I play through the grid, that the dynamics stay the same. So I'm going to keep time, like upbeats with my left foot, keep the paradiddle going, and then I'm going to move through the 16th note grid, right, which is like all the 16th notes, 1, E, and I'm going to play all the possible places of 1, places of 2, places of 3, 4. I always add to that, I do groups of 3, like dotted eighth notes, and then groups of 5. Because if you can do groups of 3 and groups of 5 over it, then you can kind of play any pattern that's thrown at you. And then the last thing I would do is pull out one of those reading pages from like the New Breed or any random notation page, and I would test myself in real time with the page. Because like if you just like go from one part of the grid, one partial to the next, you're not really figuring out how good you are at playing it immediately, like you are if you're reading a page and it's throwing all these random notations at you. So I'm going to move through the grid first, just over the top of this, and we'll see where I mess up. Of three and fives is where it gets weird, but this is where I feel like it's, most interesting. That's a process, obviously. You're sitting there, and like when I was in music school, you just sit there and let yourself suck at those one at a time and just butcher them, for minutes at a time. And it's like, with anything you're practicing, I think it's like the Navy SEALs talk about embracing the suck, and I'm like, that is the perfect way to describe practice. Because it's not like, you don't have to accept the suck or tolerate it. They're embrace it. You have to learn to kind of love the brutal, painful practice time where you're just I can't get this, and you just keep pushing anyway. And then over time it starts to click, for the most part I can get through that without thinking too much until I get to those fives. Once I'm comfortable enough with that, that's when I would pull out a page of random notations. So let's just say the first measure is 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. So I'm just going to repeat that measure. And then of course, you find ways to flip it. So be able to do the same thing playing the paradiddle here. And then the bass drum's playing the pattern. You get the idea. And then, there's tons of ways you can expand upon, taking rudiments like that. So a fun way to do rudiments is to take that paradiddle that I was playing, and you can start to kind of rhythmically bend that pattern and start thinking of it as a triplet thing. And then you can start putting in grid, triplet grid things over the top. So for instance, I can just shuffle that paradiddle and then fill in the note in that middle triplet that's not being played with the hi-hat. And then you get kind of a sloppy groove thing. So you start with a straight pattern, then you start to let it shuffle. keep rhythmically bending that until it's like a 16th note shuffle. So like 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and then you could put like 2 notes in between. So you start straight, go to triple, and then eventually it's like a 16th note shuffle. So like. It's just a cool way to use rudiments and start kind of bending them. And then you don't have to just use the notes in the middle. You can start thinking of like, I could play the first 2 notes of the triplet, like 1 and a 2 and a, so. That's where your brain just gets melted, but it's super fun. Anyway, that's the kind of the stuff that my brain figures out when I just sit and work on this stuff. It's like, wait, what if I bend it? And what if I do that with another rudiment? You can take any rudiment and do this technically. There's a pattern I play all the time, which is, I think technically it's an 8-stroke roll, but I just think of it as paradiddle, diddle, diddle. Right, left, right, right, left, left, right, right, left, right, left, left, right, right, left, left. And then you invert that pattern, so put the 2 single strokes at the beginning and the end. And you get right, left, left, right, right, left, left, right, left, right, right, left, left, right, right, left. So I love doing that kind of bend with this pattern. It just kind of sounds cool. If I can do it. I have to play it between kick and snare, I think. It just has a cool, you figure that kind of stuff out by exploring. I didn't find that in a book, even though it's probably in a book somewhere. I probably didn't think of that for the first time. But I discovered it just by making myself explore on my own. So it's worth doing that a little bit, and not just following all the books. But books are great. I mean, I still buy books. I usually take a little bit, 15% of it and say, okay, that's cool, I can apply that. But overall, I'm kind of looking for my own concepts to explore, and hopefully over time I can kind of create my own voice on the instrument. That's like the goal. All right. Sorry for such a long answer to that. Yes.
So you've clearly embraced the suck for a long time, and your playing is quite refined stylistically. I mean, you're searching lots of tones and snare, like how you do ghost notes at a different part of the snare versus the room shot, all that kind of stuff, dynamics. How is that something that you're constantly developing, or is that more so like something that's been a slow learning over the last 5 years or so, or do you have time for that in your day where you're like researching those kinds of things?
Yeah, I mean, it's all of the conceptual stuff like this. It's been a period of. Since music school, like up until music school, I mostly learned by listening to music, trying to figure out what I was hearing. I bought things like DVDs, like Benny Greb's DVD and Todd Zuckerman's DVD. I love those DVD. I'll watch them all the time just for fun. So I learned a lot from those, but when I got to music school, I learned like all these kinds of, not necessarily everything I practiced, but kind of the foundation for it. So I could then leave school and say, okay, I know how to build on top of that. And I can explore and find a way to build my own. So it's like, for me, it's just consistently working on stuff every day and being really aware. So like with dynamics is the thing that I take dynamic coordination in particular really seriously, because like the first time I did like a jazz performance class in school, I picked up, because I'd already done a fair bit of coordination stuff before school, and I'd never done jazz, because I didn't grow up doing any kind of band or anything. So jazz was totally foreign to me when I got to music school. but I wanted to learn the foundation of it. So I got the coordination, like the patterns and stuff, the comping and stuff came pretty quick. But when I went to performance class and performed a song, the way that those performance classes worked was our amazing teachers would go up and say, we're going to demo the song. And you're like, yay! And then they would just murder that song. And everyone's like, no, because you have to go up and try to play it after them. And my teacher in that class, his name was Tom Knight. If you've never heard of him, he was TLC's drummer for years when they were touring. And he studied with Dave Weckl for like 20 years. And he sounds like Dave Weckl. And so he's just this monster, right? So he goes up and just shreds, you know. And then I went up and I played, and I finished the song and I go right to him, and I'm ready for him to like. I'm in music school because I want you to like shred me to pieces and show me what I need to focus on. And he would always say like, man, the stuff you're playing is great. You're right, but you have to cut the dynamics in half. You have to be able to play all that stuff like you're in a restaurant. And so it became an obsession of mine to, when I pull out a practice pad or anything, I generally spend more time with my sticks way down here. It's very easy to get a practice pad and just start hammering away, but man, I spend so much time on the, really low dynamics. I want to be able to move around the kit and still play stuff, but not get super loud. And like try to create hills and valleys as best I can. And for me, it became an obsession just to get the pads out, work on my technique, really, small tap strokes, and then like other, just like dynamic coordination exercises you can do. Number one, I would say, is jazz. If you don't practice jazz drumming, maybe a lot of people are like, oh, I always tell this to students, like, you should work on jazz. I don't listen to jazz, I don't play jazz. It's not about playing jazz. It's about learning the dynamic coordination of the jazz, the swing, the different rhythmic bending that happens inside of it. But the dynamics in particular will change. If you get comfortable with the dynamics of jazz, it'll change every other style you play. Your groove will feel better. My understanding is like John Bonham's favorite drummers were jazz drummers. And you can tell the way he plays, he was taking concepts that Tony Williams did and putting them on this huge rock kit. And people are like, oh, this is the Bonham triplet thing, Well, Tony Williams was doing that before Bonham. And, but he was doing it in jazz. And so if you learn the jazz side, it changes the way you play rock. Another good example would be like Alon Rubin. I love the way Alon Rubin plays because you can tell that he took some time to work on jazz and Latin and stuff. He's got a lot of stuff going on in his playing. So jazz will change your dynamics and your touch and your field naturally. Like in order to play it, you just have to get comfortable with that. Keeping a nice steady ride and playing really quiet, ghost notes and things. And then just dynamic exercises, using rudiments can be really helpful. So like I'll take doubles and I'll play like an accent pattern that doesn't naturally fit, like every 3. I'm still playing right, left, right, or like 5. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You start working on the dynamics within the patterns. That stuff kind of starts naturally coming out. But yeah, like how to hit drums and touch and feel, to me, like that's everything. I lose interest in drumming that doesn't have dynamics in it, just personally. They can be incredibly impressive, but to me, you lose all the musical, what makes it musical. That's why, I love guys like Keith Carlock and Benny Greb and Mark Juliana, and it's like there's this huge dynamic range in their playing, and then they never lose the pulse and the groove in what they're doing. Anyway, sorry to ramble. I can talk about drums for hours.
I was going to say, when you did that, the 5 with the double strokes, it really, you're pulling those accents off. It makes you do the accent on the second bounce, the second time around.
Right.
Which makes great stick control.
Right, yeah, you have to learn to just and that comes down to technique, and everyone's technique's different, and that's good. But, you have to figure out, if you want to do something like that, then you have to learn to kind of snap that second stroke.
Yeah.
And then, doing that can be just as tricky,
Yeah.
getting an accent and then a ghost note. And so by, doing this, if you want to play that 5-note grouping, you're going to play 2 doubles, accent the first notes, then 2 doubles accenting the second, and then 2 without accents. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then left hand lead, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can do the same thing with 7. You can figure out any patterns you like. You can change up, obviously, the rudiment that you're using, and there's obviously a zillion rabbit holes. Every rabbit hole you go down leads to 1,000 other rabbit holes, and then you eventually realize that this is an infinite instrument that no one will ever really master. And that's what makes it fun, because you can always find your own path to go down, And if you sit there and pick, your own paths, eventually you end up with your own sound. And people are like, oh, you kind of have a unique thing going on. And it's like, well, yeah, because I let myself explore. Obviously, you go too far down certain rabbit holes and you start to lose the interest of people's ears. And then you kind of have a problem, in my opinion. But if you are passionate about playing crazy, odd time, polyrhythm stuff, then go for it. It's just, I personally, if I go too far down that rabbit hole, eventually it's like, the average person who likes music is going to have no idea what you're doing. And I want to try to learn things that, the average person who just likes to hear a groove or something can still enjoy, even if they don't understand what I'm doing. Anyway, anybody else?
So I've been working on like developing a same level of like dexterity in my left hand and like same level of comfort, and it's like I've been like really intentionally trying to keep the gap between my finger and thumb while playing, but it's just like every time I get a little faster it just like closes up again and starts sweating. It's like I'm just trying to figure out if you have anything like
Oh, yeah. We were just talking about the left hand today, how much we hate our left hand. Because I hate my left hand. It's like, it's like the lazy brother that, why does this one work so well and I have to work so hard to get this one to do anything? For me, it's just extra work. So I put way more time on my left hand. I'll sit there and watch a movie and just have my left hand playing, because it's like, it just needs way more time. And in terms of technique, there are a lot of right ways with technique. I think the idea of keeping that open and loose is really good, but you may have learned that from someone who has totally different hands than you. And like, I've got pretty small hands. I'm a big guy, but like, my longest finger is not very long, right? If you added an inch to my hands, my technique would have to change. So it's hard to say that there's a particular technique you could work on that would work. That's why I always explored every technique. Because you're going to get someone that says like, oh, you don't need to use this. That's never going to be useful to you. And it's like, well, that might be true for you in your hands, but maybe it's perfect for me in my hands. Like, oh, you don't need to learn French grip. It's like, well, have you seen Carter McLean play? Because all he does is French grip, and he just shreds all over, and it's amazing. So, for me, work on find different people teaching different techniques, because maybe just one little thing someone says makes it click, and you go, oh, if I just focus on that. And then I just, for me, it's just a lot more time. I get way more time in on my left hand. I'll just sit there, watch a movie, the stick flies out of my hand, I grab another one. Sticks are always fly out of my hands, because I'm trying to hold the stick loose. One thing I'll say about technique, just briefly, like, there's a lot of right ways to hold the sticks. But my goal, and what I consider to be good technique, is when you let the stick play the instrument. I don't want this playing the instrument, I want this playing. The goal of my hand is to put the stick in place to play the instrument. And if I'm holding a little too tight, now all of this is hitting the instrument, and all that energy is going into the cymbal or the snare, and then it's going back into my hand. So the best the instrument's going to sound is if just the stick hits and then comes off. So that's like my goal when I play, is to let the sticks do the work. And it doesn't always work that way, because sometimes you have to play with more power. Like if I'm playing at church, sometimes you just have to dig in, and Todd Zuckerman has some of the best technique ever, but when he plays with sticks, he tapes his hands up completely because he knows he's gonna just sit there and smash, you know. And he's got amazing technique, but there's different situations. So anyway, that's what I'll say is like if you can learn to let the stick do as much as it's gonna do naturally, and learn to hold the stick loose enough where, you know. And for me that means I lose the sticks a lot. They're gonna fly out of my hands. I always have regular other sticks ready to go. Just because I know at some point the stick's going to fly out of my hand because I'm, you know, just one little inch off or something and it's going to go flying. So anyway, I hope that helps.
For the My Daily Practice video, do you still practice every one of those patterns every time before you practice, or has the list kind of changed over time?
The list always changes for me. That's what it was at the time. Most of those are still on there. I still like to do unisons, double permutations, paradiddle permutations, Swiss triplets, single flanged mills. I love that Gavin Harrison thing. It's fun to mess with. I like the Stanley Randolph thing in there, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2 thing, if you haven't seen that. It's a great way to just warm up your bass drum. So if you play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, that adds up to 2 bars of 16th notes. So it's 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1. And you just use that as a groove. And there's tons of fun you can have with that. You can play it with your hand. Or you can play it like you know, and play like a linear pattern. So like that was just playing like inverted doubles with accents. So if I played like, well, I'll play it with regular doubles. So it'd be like, so you're playing accents and then putting a double in between. If you make that an inverted double and then put a kick before each accent, you get. Same thing with a new breed page. You can read the whole page. Right, or you know, find interesting ways to take that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 idea, or permutate the whole pattern. Like start at a 16th note late. This is like what I do. I find crazy things to work that I feel like it's like a real structured thing. It's not just some random pattern or something. It's like a structured thing that I can actually use to develop things. So I don't know what the original question was. I just got off on that. Sorry. I'm not using my mic. I apologize. Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of times if I'm like working on rudiments and stuff, I make myself just start left-hand lead. With a lot of rudiment ideas, I always try left-hand lead. It is a good idea to start working on some open-handed grooves and using your, like if you're not used to it, lead things with your left hand just a little bit, even if it's just for the physical side of it. You realize pretty quick how weak your left hand is when you have to sit there and play something over and over. But yeah, left-hand lead stuff is it's just weird, and it's so natural for your brain to just want to start and end things with your right hand. So you just have to find creative ways to make yourself start and finish patterns with your left. So for me, it's just like I have to think about, okay, I'm going to work on this linear idea, and I have to start with my left, and I have to finish with my left. So let's just say I'm working on, I don't know, left, right kick, right, left kick as like 16th notes. Right, just doing that, where I started with my left and then I finished with my left. I've gone as far one time I just took everything off my kit, cymbal-wise, except for one cymbal over here. And I couldn't end a fill and do this. So I had to learn how to finish fills with my left hand, and stuff like that can really help. So you just have to kind of think about that. If there's a particular idea in that flow lesson, then yeah. And it's a good idea. If anytime you learn a linear pattern or a rudiment, make sure that your left hand is just as comfortable leading it. And it takes time. Your brain doesn't like your other hand as much. It's like, and my teacher Tom Knight would talk about it. He would do, what do you call it, neoaerobic exercises, where he'd make his left hand do things that he normally wouldn't. So he'd brush his teeth with his left hand, eat dinner with his left hand, open doors with his left hand. He could take his wedding ring and like shift it between the tips of his fingers with one hand, and then the other hand he's flipping a coin through his knuckles at the same time, and we're all like, what are you doing? You're not supposed to be able to do that. And he's like, yeah, just, neoaerobic exercises, and it over time gets your left hand more comfortable. Your brain starts to be okay with using your left hand more. So like for me, I'm always twirling my sticks while I watch TV or something, and my left hand's not as good. I have to think about it, and when I'm doing this right now, my right hand is like wanting to do it. And so I'm always just getting my left hand, and I just sit here and twirl, and I drop the sticks and grab another one. Twirling sticks has helped me a lot with my left hand because I can't do the coin. I've tried. I can't do it. Anyway, yeah.
I think you might have touched on it earlier, but I was just curious as to what your ultimate goals or aspirations are whether it's to be like a better educator, you aspire to make a certain type of music, or are you just wanting to be better yourself and everything else is a byproduct of that?
Yeah, I mean, as weird as it sounds, my goal is to, I like what I do. I get to work from home. I get to see my kids all the time. So I don't have a desire to like go out on the road or do anything like that. I like education. I like teaching and helping people find interesting ways that they can explore the instrument. So I like being the explorer that figures things out and then comes back and says, hey, look, you can try this, and look what I found over here, and it's fun. So the education side is where I want to focus. I have a lot. I'm writing some books. I've got some other lesson videos I'm making. It's a long writing books is like we're trying to organize all these things that have just lived up here for the years, and getting written out in a book is taking a while. But I'm writing a number of books on coordination, rudiments, and stuff like that. Because I'd like the education side. I like this. I didn't know if I'd like it because it's very nerve-wracking, but I think I like this. I'd like to do more clinics and stuff because I think it fits the way I teach, I think. And then music, I have my band, Naughty Panda. We're always getting together and playing, but we haven't recorded a lot. But we'd like to, so I'd like to make music. If I'm going to spend time on music anymore, it's because I want to enjoy the music. I want it to be something that I care about. I always find it challenging when, I do sessions, people send me tracks and stuff, but it's always more challenging to get into those as much as when it's like something that you're making with, some friends or something. But overall, I like the education side. I enjoy it. Yeah, that's a good question. Because I'm still working on it right now because I have a 3-month-old daughter, and it's hard for me because I'd love to wake up earlier, but my brain is so awake late at night, and sometimes I feel most creative late at night. But an ideal schedule for me, like when I do a day right, I'm waking up pretty early. I'm doing my practice in the morning from about 8 or 9 until around 12 or 1. And then I'm
generally gonna work out, and then the afternoon I'm gonna spend working on like what the kind of work that I don't want to do, like editing videos and writing and all that, sitting down at the computer kind of work. And then I spend my evenings, usually try to spend like dinner time and everything with the family. And then usually when the family goes to bed, that's when I'm like going to do physical practice. And I'll sit down on my practice kit and I'll turn something on the TV or on my computer, and I'll sit there and push myself physically. And then I'll typically do that kind of mental practice 4, maybe 5 days a week. But that's what works for me. There's times where the day changes things, and I can only get a couple hours in, like in the afternoon or something. So I have to flip things around. But an ideal day for me would be get all of my practice done in the morning, the afternoon get all the other work that I have to do done, and then at night after my family goes to bed, I can do my physical practice. That's what works for me. One thing that I'm going to start doing soon, I don't know if anyone's going to be interested in this, but I'm going to start live streaming a couple of my practice sessions a week, where I'm just practicing. You can just watch me suck at stuff, and I'll talk about what I'm working on and answer questions that I can. And I don't know if people are interested in that, but I feel like some people might like watching me just struggle with different things. And so I'm going to start doing that probably in the next month, because I think it's easy to look at Instagram or something and it's just all the fun flashy stuff, and it is. It's just stuff that I'm going, I like that video, I like that clip, and it seems weird to me to take a clip of me like butchering an exercise and put it on Instagram, but I'd like to share that process, because that's most of my time, is sitting there and struggling with stuff and like forcing my brain to do really uncomfortable things. So I thought, you know what, I'll share that with the world and see if anyone cares. So I'll be doing that soon if anyone is interested. Anyway, but that's in general how I would organize my day, ideally.
Yeah, you mentioned analytical mode and switching from that to creative. Are you still counting the time when you're in that creative space?
I'm not counting, no. The goal is to get, for me at least, is to get to the point where I'm just feeling that time. So I want to feel 7 more than count it in that. I think over time you just you can feel what that pulse feels like, and I'm just trying to. It's like I'm just hearing something in my head, like I'm just hearing 7. I'm not thinking 7, but I might in my head it's like. I just wanted to see what I'm actually doing. I guess I'm kind of thinking 7, but I don't know if I'm counting it. But I'm definitely kind of feeling like a dun 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 dun. Like that doesn't leave my head.
Are you still thinking about the patterns?
I'm not thinking about the patterns at that point. I know what I want to play. I know what I want to hear. But it's like the point of that analytical practice is to be a micromanager and train my limbs to do the job so that I don't have to think about it. If I've done the training right, then I shouldn't have to think about what my limbs are doing. If I've done it wrong, then I'm going to be sitting there thinking, why isn't my left hand pulling out that double? And that's just always going to be there a little bit. But, I might have an idea like, okay, I want to play, I don't know. I might think of that pattern, but I'm not thinking of the individual sticking. I'm thinking of the pattern, and my brain goes, here you go. Because I've just drilled that thing, so many times and then connected it so that it comes out immediately. So I'm not thinking of individual notes. I'm thinking of like whole ideas, like in an orchestra. I'm going to take this section and then oftentimes it doesn't work and I mess up and I make a lot of mistakes, and then I've learned to kind of fix them in real time and try to get away with it, And I think if you watched guys like, if if I watched like Weckel practice or something, I'd be sitting there in awe of what he's doing, and he'd probably go, "Man, I made so many mistakes." And I go, "What are you talking about?" Like, because he's hearing all the little things that I'm not, and he's fixing them so quick. You know, I think everybody makes mistakes. You just get really good at fixing them in real time. Another reason why working on note rates is so valuable, and another reason why it's a good idea. There's a drummer named Cliff Almond. I don't know if anyone's heard of that guy, but he's a great drummer. And he had an exercise that's really valuable if you want to build up your time and your ability to kind of fake things a little bit. So you play with a metronome for 4 bars without getting away from it. And then for the next 4 bars, you purposefully play completely away from it. You speed up, you slow down, you play random, whatever you want. But after 4 bars, you have to come right back in on 1 and keep playing in time. And you just go back and forth, and you train your brain, no matter what you do, what mistake you make, in the back of your head, you know where the 1 is. You can speed up, slow down. And there's guys that I think have mastered that. Dennis Chambers has mastered the ability to just play whatever he wants, but he knows right where the 1 is, and he can come right back in. And it's like, sometimes it's not mathematically perfect, but he's so fast. 1, you know, and he's right back in. It's like, it didn't need to make sense, but it sounds amazing because he knows where the 1 is. Anyway, I hope that. All right. Oh, yep.
You're one of the most textured drummers I've ever heard play, and I was just wondering if there was something like, if there was like something you could tell us about your thought process, because it's like I don't think I've ever like heard anyone like use buzz roll with like the hi-hats combined in a really good way. It's just like
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, little things like that mostly came from, you know, the initial idea came from like seeing someone do it. So like Tom Knight, my old teacher, played this pattern. And like that little, you know, that kind of stuck with me. And so it's like, okay, I need to figure out a lot of ways I can mess with that. And just figure out ways I could kind of put it in different ways and play, you know, triplet with it or whatever. So I like that. You know, you can fit it. Like, it's just fun to mess with, around with. So like that was an idea that came initially from just seeing him do something. And then like buzz rolls and stuff, there's a lot of guys that are great. Carter McLean's a good example, just lots of really tasteful buzz rolls. You know, so, you know, it's really about listening. You have to have a bunch of drummers. You know, I have a list of a lot of drummers I like, but there's a few that I constantly listen to, and you pick up little things. I'm not interested in the specifics of what they're playing as much. Like, I don't want to know the exact sticking. I want to know the concept behind it. Like, okay, I know what note rate you're in. I know you're playing like a linear thing, and you're moving between 5 and, you know, and I can kind of figure out on my own how to play something similar. But you got to listen to get the sound in your head. There's things that I'll play, and in my mind, I'm thinking Keith Carlock. He's got that kind of, you know. You know, and it's like, okay, can I create something similar, you know, and find maybe my own stickings or own ways of playing things to play something of my own that has that, you know, as a reference, you know. Same thing with like Benny Greb or Mark Juliana. I love their drumming. Yost Nickel, Nat Townsley, Chris Coleman, like there's tons of guys that I pick up things that they do, and I can't do them like they can, but I can figure out something of my own that's similar, you know, with my own concepts. So that's really all it is. All right. Yeah. I don't think about when I'm playing, but I practice on a lot of different surfaces. So I'll use like gum rubber pads for technique work, like when I want to work on rebound or a particular technique or like finger control. I like gum rubber pads, and a lot of times I'll use heavy sticks, marching sticks. And if I really want to work on technique, I'll use metal sticks. and I'll play real slow. The idea with metal sticks, if you use them improperly, you can really hurt your tendons and ligaments. But if you think of them like if I play this stick really fast, the faster I move it, the heavier the stick feels. So a metal stick is like being able to slow time down. And when I play like this, it feels the same way a stick feels when I'm playing really fast. So I can think of it like slow motion with a metal stick, and I can focus on my technique and what's going wrong. Why does my thumb work so much harder on my left hand than my right hand? And so metal sticks can help with that. And then like this surface, reflex pad, or there's Prologix, I think. There's all different surfaces. You know, I spend a lot of time on this kind of dead side. Practice on pillows and stuff if you want. And then I've also, you know, throughout the years, I have a ton of different sticks that I'll pick up and practice with. I even had a little pair of baby sticks one time that I'd make myself practice with. I don't have those anymore. But I tried to get myself comfortable playing different surfaces. And then hopefully in the moment, my hands know how to pull out what I need to out of the different instruments. But I guess I've never really thought about it while I'm playing the instrument. Maybe my hands just over time, you know, when I move to the floor tom, just naturally, I guess my brain's like, okay, you got to muscle these out a little more than, you know, snare. But it's a ton of pad work. I mean, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of times I've hit pads, but it's a lot. Like I've just a lot of pad work, a lot of pushing my hands and developing technique and being really pissed with my left hand. I don't like it today. I was really mad, you know, because it just doesn't feel as good as I want it to. But yeah, hopefully that answers it a little. All right. Well, I have one more track I'll play, and then that's it. This is by. Man, I'm a little cold now. This is gonna be hard. This is by.
Question, sorry.
Oh, no problem.
What kind of technique do you use to kick kind of?
I'm heel up, and you know, I think.
Try with different, like, you try with different?
Yeah, I've tried different things. I've tried working on different things, but for me, it always made sense to just do what my foot does. Like, what does my foot naturally want to do? The biggest thing I will say about like foot technique for me is balance. So like, for me, the only reason my foot technique works is because I feel balanced in my chair. So like, if I asked most drummers to sit on their kit and get comfortable, okay, now lift your feet up off the kit. You're just going to fall right onto your kit because you're using your legs maybe as kickstands. And a lot of people kind of have, like, they're kind of leaning on the kit and a lot of their weight's on the pedals. I want to be able to lift my feet up off of the pedals and have them kind of float over and still feel like I can balance in my seat. So finding the right balance for me was big, and then finding the right distance. I like my knee right over my heel. And the goal is that when I'm in a resting position, I'm not burying the beater. So I'm just kind of floating my foot over the pedal. And then I can just use, yeah, it's just an ankle motion for me. So I'm just floating over the kit, and then when I want to fire, that's what the double looks like. But for me, it's because my foot is floating over the pedal, and I don't feel like I'm lifting my leg. I'm not fighting with balance while I play. When I figured out how to get balanced in my seat and take that work away from my feet, like they already have enough of a job of playing an instrument. They shouldn't have to focus on balance, and that'll change your technique. So that's what I do. But again, I don't think there's a right or wrong way. I mean, unless you're like Jojo Mayer, you know, then there's definitely a right way, and I can't do it.
That's the reason I just asked you, you know?
Yeah.
But I think the key, I think you're right, the key is the balance. It's like, endure balance.
Right.
How do you feel?
Yeah. Getting balance to the point where I don't feel, and it has a lot to do with the throne too. Like I used to use, my thrones would always wear out and they'd start to wobble, and pretty soon I'm not realizing that I'm doing this, and that just takes, your brain now has to focus on balance while you're playing, and that just drains creativity. So get a throne that doesn't ever wiggle. I always use the hydraulic ones now, like the Tama first chair is fantastic because it's like I know it's never going to wiggle on me. It's like it's really firm. I know I can sit here, I can pull my feet off the pedals, I feel good. If I can't lift my feet off the pedals without staying upright, then I know I'm not balanced in my seat. And then I'm going to be kind of leaning on my pedals. And so foot technique for me got way easier when I got balanced. Because my foot's just floating there. When I want to play, you know, it doesn't mean you don't have to work on it. You still have to sit there and learn how to fire that first, that can take a little time. Everybody plays doubles differently, but anyway. No problem. All right, any other last questions? Cool. All right, this song is by a composer named Antonio Pinto. He did a movie with The Rock called Snitch, and this is the main song called Snitch to that movie. And I randomly put up a video on Instagram playing it, and he found it and liked it, and we had some conversations, and he's a super nice guy. So I just wanted to play it. It doesn't have any drumming in it, so it's just me kind of improvising over it. And yeah, hopefully it feels okay for that terrible cold. Let's try it.
thanks so much for coming out. I really appreciate it. And thanks for all the support. It really helped a lot with my nerves. And thanks again to everybody at Forks. What's that? Oh, thanks. I don't know if you want them. I think it is.